Welcome to episode 1 of Exploring Playwrights. In this series, we take a look at different writers' styles, what may have influenced those styles, and a brief overview of their works, especially which ones should you know if you're a student of literature or a practitioner of the theatrical arts. And in our introductory episode, there's no better spot to start than with the father of tragedy, and in a way, all of theater, Aeschylus. Aeschylus was born to a noble family around 525 BC, somewhere near Athens. We don't know a lot about his childhood, but we actually do know quite a bit about his life for someone who lived so long ago. He fought against the Persians in the Battle of Marathon, and his two brothers were actually war heroes, one of whom was a naval commander and another of whom grabbed a ship. It's pretty crazy, but they were very revered war heroes. So he comes from a military background, as did many of the people in Athens around this time, because they were almost always at war. When he was not at war, he traveled the Mediterranean, especially to Sicily, and he actually died there in 456 BC. One little fact about his life that's always fascinated me is that he was arrested, or at least charged, for divulging the Eleusinian Mysteries, which is this secret festival that was so well guarded we still don't know exactly what happened at it to this day. Apparently he was talking about it in one of his plays, but it doesn't seem like the charges stuck because he was able to continue writing, and in fact he wrote 90 plays in total. He won the Dionysian playwriting competition 13 times. This was a festival/competition for playwriting in Athens, and it really facilitated the famous tragedians that we know to this day, of whom Aeschylus is the oldest. But for how often he won and for how many plays he wrote, only 7 of his plays survive, which is part of the tragedy, is we don't know most of what he wrote. But what he did write is quite amazing, and we're still studying it and performing it to this day. So the reason we're starting with Aeschylus, the reason why he's called the father of tragedy, is the oldest surviving play that we have is his. So he is the starting point for our scholarship on theater, and people wrote about him like Aristotle. So he was a big deal back in his day. So it's important to remember that we don't just read him because his work survived. I mean, that is a prerequisite for us to read them today, but they were respected in his day. People certainly wrote plays before him, but according to Aristotle, Aeschylus added more characters. He turned them more into the sort of things we think of today when we think of plays, as opposed to poems. Getting into the plays specifically, Aeschylus wrote a very famous and the only surviving trilogy from ancient Greece, which is the Orestia. A lot of playwrights wrote trilogies, but they don't survive, and other playwrights such as Sophocles, who we'll talk about next time, wrote plays that interlink, but they weren't actually presented at the same festivals. They weren't meant to be performed one right after the other. So even though they're borrowing from characters that are interconnected, the only actual trilogy we have is Aeschylus's. And Aeschylus was a warrior, as we mentioned, as almost every Greek male was at that time. But there was a pause in the conflicts that allowed Aeschylus to focus on writing as opposed to combat. However, even though they were at peace, Aeschylus is often writing about warfare. He takes from and adds a lot to the works and themes of Homer, specifically the Iliad. However, even though he is so war-obsessed, there is a sense of stability and hope and compassion amidst all of the brutality. Aeschylus understands warfare, he understands the cost of it, but he doesn't promote it. And that's one of the things I find most beautiful about his tragedies. Okay, so for the plays themselves, the one play that you really need to know if you're a student of literature or practitioner of theater is Agamemnon. That is the first play in the Orestia, the trilogy, and while the other 2 plays are certainly important and still performed, they pale in comparison to the first one. Agamemnon tells the story of the main general of the Greek force going to Troy during the Trojan War. And Agamemnon has everyone looking to him at all times. And he makes a couple pretty terrible decisions in this combat. And before he even gets to war, he sacrifices his daughter for favorable winds so that they can make it to Troy. He returns from combat with a mistress, with a prize, as they called them, Cassandra, and his wife, Clytemnestra, is quite upset about both of these things. So a lot of this play is the fallout from that decision, and it's phenomenal. If you're at all familiar with the Iliad, it is a great play to read because it tells the story of one of the Iliad's main characters and what happens to him when he goes back home. There's some other really interesting works in here. I personally really enjoy Seven Against Thebes. Prometheus Bound is very famous, although it is a little debated. It might not have been by Aeschylus, it might have been by his son. And The Persians, we definitely have to take a second to point out, The Persians is the oldest of all the Greek tragedies that has survived to the modern day. So if you were looking for the oldest play that you can read in the Greek theatrical tradition, that would be The Persians by Aeschylus. Well, I hope you found this video interesting. Let me know in the comments what your experience with Aeschylus is. I feel he is a little underperformed and understudied compared to his other tragic counterparts, but his reputation has never really waned, and it's been going on for a really long time, so very impressive. So yeah, let me know if you're familiar with his plays, what your thoughts on them are. I've only studied them in the classroom. I've not performed any of these, but I would love to be involved in a production one day. And if you are looking for a nice little place to write wonderful notes about these plays, check out Field Notes. There is a link in the description to get a discount on their products. They have been supporting the channel and sent me some notebooks to talk about, and I absolutely love them. These incredible watercolors from a famous American naturalist. So they are finally leaning into the crossover between field note lovers and bird watchers, and I am all here for it. So check out that link in the description if you would like to get a discount and support a small business that supports this channel. Thank you so much again for watching. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one when we talk about Sophocles. Till then, happy reading.